of us this evening. Before I call upon Mr. Mali to deliver the formal welcome address and other speakers onto the stage, let me tell you what's happening MMA quickly in next 1 minute, so that if you're missed in your inbox, so that you don't miss some outstanding event which you are presenting it to you in the month of December. Next event is on implementation of Industry 4.0 in a post-pandemic world. It's happening on Thursday, the 16th of December. We have some outstanding galaxy of speakers will be talking to you, starting from Kamal Bali. He's a MD of Volvo, to number of people are going to talk to you on how implementation of Industry 4.0 is very, very essential post-industry, post-pandemic. Then we also have event on 17th. We have read the book because read and grow. The theme of the book discussion is another interesting theme where we have outstanding speakers will be coming and talking to us. This is happening on 17th. All these events are happening live in person at MMA Management Centre. Then on Monday, the 20th, we have conclave on the thing, robust public policy for future transformation. Again, we have some outstanding speakers. Mr. Ramesh, a former chairman of Deloitte, and he's also independent director of Nestle. He's there. Then Amarnath Anantanaran is a corporate managing director of corporate Sanmar Group. Then we have also Sangeeta. Then Mr. Kumar is going to be talking. He's a senior partner for industry in Deloitte. He's going to be talking to us how the boardroom can be really empowered by the CEOs by effective coordination with the board. It's very, very important. We also have a Shankari Raman and Balaji and another gentleman from the TCL will be talking to us the future of cryptocurrency. It's good to know that. Then we have again on 21st, personal branding for career growth. Anuradha Narasimhan going to be talking to us. She is professor of practice of DS School of Entrepreneurship from IIT Mumbai. Then on the 23rd, we have again an excellent conclave on leadership in the new normal. This is a conclave where again we have lined up some outstanding speakers. In the inaugural session, we have the executive director of Indian Oil Chennai, head of entire operation in South, even talking to us how they empowered the new normal by following some brilliant innovative system in the public sector undertaking. Then we have second session, our own Anantha Nageshwaran, who is the Prime Minister Advisory Council, and is also former Vice Dean of Kriya University, and also in Singapore National University, the visiting professor. He's going to be talking to us. Then on this is what we are lined up for this month, and all these events, I am suggest you don't miss them. And we are also having one on NIPM. This is happening on 28th of November, which will be finalized very soon. Now, coming to today's event, yes, we are indeed privileged to host this discussion on the theme of the book, how Watershed, how we destroyed India's water and how we can save it. When Mridula Ramesh, she's a member of our managing committee, we've done a lot of work together. And when she said she's writing the book, that time itself we reserved. This book discussion will happen only at MMA, and which she readily accepted. And today we are all here to discuss on the book. And I'm also very, very happy that large number of viewers will be watching the program. Now let me have the privilege of now calling upon the distinguished speaker, chairman, and also the special committee, and also my vice president of MMA to come onto the stage, Mr. Mali, Mridula Ramesh, Ranga. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to our distinguished panelists for this evening. And also a warm welcome to Ravi, who has joined us from Bangalore on Zoom, Dubai, sorry. Yes, can you show Shankar? Ravi. Yeah, Mr. Ravishankar is a special invitee. He joined us from Dubai. You know, Ravishankar is not new to MMA. He is a managing director of Sequola Capital India Limited. You know, the program flow for this evening is, if you have any questions, please keep it to you. At the end of the day, we have an opportunity. The first choice is to you. Then only we take the questions which has come from our social media portals, various social media portals. The program flow will be, I'll request Mr. Mali to formally welcome the gathering and also set the context. We'll also invite the distinguished speakers for this evening. Thereafter, we will request Ranga for a free-flowing five-chat chat conversation with Mridula, and also Ravishankar, who is a special invitee. He'll be asking some questions. And we are going to make it very, very interesting, fun-filled evening this evening on the theme, which is very, very thought-provoking. Now, let me have the privilege of introducing Mr. Mali. Mali is a partner director of PSM Group of companies, which are interested across all sectors, automobile, real estate, and much more. Mali is also an active angel investor. He is now president of the Children Club, treasurer of Brahmagana Sabha, and former president of IM Calcutta Alumni Association, and is also executive committee member of Chennai Angels. And Mali is a regular speaker, guest lecturer, and number of institutions, college. He's always active. I don't know how he finds in 24 hours to do so many things. He's also very active at MMA, being a vice president of MMA. Besides that, he's also chairman of the Student Convention Committee. You all know recently we presented the Student Convention Committee, which was watched by over 70,000 people, students from around India. And very warm welcome to you, Mali. I request Mali to deliver a formal welcome address. Over to you, Mali. With big round of applause, let's welcome Mr. Mali to deliver the welcome address.
Thanks, Vijay Kumar. Makes me feel better about myself. Thank you. Good evening. Warm welcome to all of you here. So many of you here in these COVID days is really heartening to see. I'm sure many of you are watching online also. Originally, I was supposed to just do the welcome address. So for whatever reason, I called Vijay Kumar this morning and said, can I have some details about other speakers? Immediately jumped on it and said, why don't you introduce them on stage? So I'm going to do a bit of both. Mridula, thanks. It's my privilege actually to introduce Mridula, Ranga, and Ravi. Anyway, let me start with the welcome bit. First of all, it's indeed my privilege and honor to deliver the formal welcome address to this Watershed evening, should I call it? Oh, so cliche, correct. So I'm sure you've heard of it many times. Watershed event at the Madras Management Centre organized by the MMA and Conrad Adinus System. I consider it a privilege to welcome Mridula, the star as being the author of the book, which we are going to discuss. She's also Executive Director, Sundaram Textiles, Joint Managing Director, Southern Roadways, and founder, Sundaram Climate Institute. More of about Mridula as we introduce her. I'll stick now. Then N K Ranganath, first the close to home introduction, past president MMA. He was one of the presidents who really helped MMA transform itself into what it is today. Thanks, Ranga, for that. And ex-MD of Grundfos Pumps. And he's on the National Committee of Water for CII. Thanks, Ranga, for doing this for us. Thank you. Oh, thank you. We are here thanks to him is what you're saying. And finally, GV Ravishankar. Let me start with a personal note of pride. I would like to say that I went to the same engineering college that Ravi went to, NIT Trichy, though he went in much later. I'm really privileged, Ravi, to have you here, to be an alumnus of the same institute you went to. Ravi is many things. I think he's one of the foremost investors in the country, managing director of Sequola Capital, with interests in consumer, education, finance, etc. He's on the boards of the many of the most successful startups, including Byju's, Edutech, etc. Many of these companies, Eruditus, Byju's, and many. He's on the board of Rupeek also. I think is a very well-respected investor. So it's really an honor to have Ravi with us today. I think Ravi and Mridula have a McKinsey connection as well. Is that right? So feeling not only privileged but very intelligent suddenly. Thanks, Mridula and Ravi, for that. Okay. Thanks, Ravi, for accepting this invitation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Part of
this from all the way from Dubai. Thank you. That's what I heard. Is that right?
That's right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for taking time. Now on to introducing the speakers. Let me start with Ranga. As I mentioned, Ranga is, as Vijay said, is the reason we are here in this hall today and this auditorium today. Thanks, Ranga, for accepting. As I mentioned, he's been involved in great depth with what I would like to say. Having been MD of Grundfos. Thanks, Ranga, again for doing this for us. Ravi, as I mentioned, is very close to my heart because of my college connection, as I mentioned, and he's an expert on so many matters that it would be a privilege to listen to him today. Now, coming to the author of the evening, Mridula Ramesh. Now, I've learned the hard way that introducing people you know well is very tricky. Okay, because you talk to them pretty often and you assume you know a lot about them. What I did specifically was just before they started, 10 minutes before that, I spoke to Mridula, what else she does with her life. And I realized that Googling is not good enough in many cases because people like Mridula don't say anything in public domain. Okay, so apart from all the official roles, she's on the FICCI committee of the National Circuit Economy. She's on the board of the World Wildlife Fund. She's on the board of, what else, Mridula? How many more? Many things. So Mridula wears many, many hats actually. So she's on the grand jury for the European Climate Kickstart. She's authored one book earlier. She's a second-time author, and the current publishers made sure that they got Mridula back with them, basically. And I think this book, which we're going to discuss today, is Watershed, how we destroyed India's water and how we can save it. I tried my best to read it, but it was too much in the short time. I flipped through it, and I want to say a little about the book before I hand it over to Ranga. See, normally books like this, very dry, full of graphs, statistics, and stuff like that. But this is quite different. Started with the quote with Chandopanishad, then there's the Tirukkural, then there's the Meghadutam. I was wondering what I was reading, whether it's a fiction thriller. I've been telling Mridula to write a fiction thriller for long, but I haven't taken that on that. And it crisscrosses geography, traverses history, talks about cuisine and how the impact of water in cuisine. I never knew water could be so interesting. Okay, Mridula really made it interesting. And I think most of these books, I think Shankar and I discussed that many of these books talk about analysis and state problems, but not beyond that. Interestingly, this book, if you notice, is almost divided into two. One of what she calls understanding, one she calls action. And many of that was eminently relatable when she talks of the temple columns and simple things, something I could understand. I'm not a real water geek or whatever. She talks about how RO water in a house, RO filter in a house was filtering out good water and was getting wasted. There's something which we can all relate to. Basically, that was what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily very technical. It's very interesting because it's woven with a lot of stuff from across the world, across the country. It goes back into history, many years, and delves into engineering as well. So I think it's a fascinating read. The little read, what I'm ensured is I'm going to go back and finish the book, Mridula, for sure. Okay, I think, so before handing out Ranga, many of us would assume that we should, topics like this are passé, but too much water has flown over too many bridges for us to call water under the bridge and move on its life. So I think we should, it's not only a wake-up call for us, but gives us workable solutions and what we can do, not only as a society, but as individuals. Thanks, Mridula, so much for doing this for MMA. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ranga.
Thank you, Mali. Mali has spoken about this book, and I also managed to read whatever I could in the few days that I had the book. It's extremely interesting the way she has gone about looking at every aspect of water, not just water as water, but what's the sociological impact of that, the ecological impact of it, and the financial impact of water and the economical impact. So these are things, and she's interwoven with a lot of stories of what has happened in the past, what is happening in the present. And just to sort of give a brief background, not a drop of water was made or destroyed from the time this earth was born. We are a blue planet. We are the only ones with enough water. And yet today, we seem to be water stressed in many countries. Why? If there's only one kind of thing that I have to blame, or person I have to blame, is human beings. We are the only ones that define nature. No other animal defies nature. That's the situation that we are in. So if we are today in this situation, it's because of what we have done with water, not just water, with environment as such. So this is the situation that we are. And water, as she has said in the book, has no substitute. You can live without food for many days. You can't live without water for many days. And that goes for air too. And we are destroying both the air and water resources of this country and this world, perhaps. So how do we go about, and that's the one interesting thing about this book. She's spoken about Watershed and how we have destroyed, or what's happening. For years, we've been talking about who owns water. Is the water in your house yours because you have a well? We seem to be claiming water as our own. No. The aquifers below are moving from your house to next house to next house and goes right across. And what you do in one place is impacting somebody else. And what we do in one country impacts the other country around. There are some countries in this world today who are not even acknowledging riparian rights, for instance, China. They don't say that you have any right to water. So if they block the Brahmaputra, we have the entire Northeast having trouble. So there is a political issue to water. There's an emotional issue to water. And water is an intrinsic part. Do you know the human being has about 70% of itself in water? We've just liquid. So that being the case, how do we go about addressing this problem, which everybody recognizes, but nobody does anything about it? Why? Because we think free water is a birthright, and because it's always available to us. Unfortunately, there is enough water, but today it's at the wrong place, in the wrong quality, and at the wrong time. The only way we can sort of resurrect this is to really get together, we sitting here and you sitting here and the rest of the society, that we have to ensure that we use this thing responsibly. When we talk of what you call environment, everybody talks of carbon, etc. So she's drawn a lot of parallels of what we should do, and she's spoken about why water should perhaps be the most important thing that we should speak of when we speak of environment and sustainability. Sustainability is often spoken of in silos: carbon neutrality, water neutrality, what we call alternate source of energy, etc., etc. But every bit of sustainable life is interlinked. Water is linked to food, food is linked to human beings, water is linked to energy, energy is linked to economy. So if you fiddle around with one, all the others get impacted. So let me ask her the first question. What does sustainability mean to you? I mean, it means different things to different people. What does it mean to you?
Thank you, Ranganath. And, hearing you talk, I think I feel a great sense of humility because I've interacted with some of you in the audience also. So I'm hoping what today will be is a discussion, not just between us, virtually, etc., but I think with all of you. And hopefully we can come away richer, all of us richer for it. I think with everything, and in the book, again and again, what I start off with is, I think at the heart of any change, the heart of any understanding, or the heart of any approach is philosophy. I think if you get philosophy right, everything sort of follows from there. And sustainability, actually, it comes from this root word saying maintained from below, right? It is held together from below. And water is actually the foundation of what we all take for granted. And to me, I think my journey is everybody's journey, right? I mean, I didn't acknowledge water. It was invisible to me for most of my life. I didn't care about it because it didn't affect me. And then 9 years ago, we ran out of water at home. Okay. And that's when it became visible. It became visible when it became absent. And that was the start of the journey. And then I'd had my daughter at that time and taken off some time, and then said, okay, one step led to another. And I said, I learned about climate change, and I said, this is really serious. And why isn't anybody talking about that? So a lot of steps came forward from there. And then in the last few years, as I've been participating in the climate related dialogues, not only in India, but in the world, especially in the investor community, right? So climate change is a big deal for the investor community, and a lot of money and funds and all. Once in a lifetime, there's plenty of money coming in. But in every discussion, I heard about carbon mitigation. Okay, what do you do for if you want, you're looking for an investment, you have to manage your carbon emissions. What do you do if you want to attract funding? You have to manage your carbon emissions. Don't get me wrong. I think carbon is very important. And as humanity, we are, Group Captain, do we have the slides? Or if it's not there, it's not there. If it's that video that was if it's there, it's great. But if it's not there, it's not a problem. Yeah, the second slide, the video is there. So what you're going to see is the temperature change that has happened. And I'll tell you why water, right? And so this is something, this may be the audience of the converted, எல்லாருக்கும் ஏன் தண்ணின்னு தெரியும்னு. But a lot of people in the climate change audience say only carbon. Water is the stepchild. So I'll just take a minute to play போட்டுருங்க. So this is the temperature change from the last 140 years. So blue means cool. Just sort of middle. This is the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and that's today. Okay, so that's why I wanted the video. It sort of says it far better than I can ever say it. So the small thing about climate change is, if the way the climate system works is, once you put emissions out there like carbon dioxide, it stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years, right? It will continue the warming. We can shut down every coal plant in India and the warming will still continue. And the next slide, please. The next slide. And the warming will still continue and continue the effects of the climate. Next slide, please. And the problem is, look, the temperature has only gone up by 1 degree. And if you go from this room to the next room, it'll go by more than 4 degrees. It's not a big deal. But the temperature sort of supercharges the water cycle. And India, that translates into wet getting wetter and dry getting drier. And when I started writing this book, there is something about India's water that struck me. I've seen a lot of, why did I write this book? I saw a lot of books on India's rivers. I saw books on drought. I saw books on farming, sewage treatment, rainwater harvesting. But I didn't find one book on India's water, right? And Kalidasa describes it beautifully in his opening stanza of Meghaduta. He puts all of the elements together. The India's water is a product of sun, sea, and mountain and land. And you need all of it, forest and mountain. And because it is a combination of the Himalayas and the Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, it has 4 characteristics. And this is something I'd like you to take away. It is geographically varied. It's meaningless to talk of average rainfall in India. In Jaisalmer, you get 165 millimeters of rainfall. Across the country, you get 5 meters of rain in a matter of months. So there is no average. Is a very stupid concept to talk of when you talk of India's water. The second thing is, we have one of the most seasonally variable water in the world. Okay, it's very skewed. So in engineering jargon, you have to manage the skew. Thirdly, we're temporally skewed. So most of, like there's a graph in the book on average number of rain days in every city in the world. And Indian cities are outliers. So what our Pandramari, rainwater harvesting becomes very important because you need storage. At the heart of it, you see these 3 things, you're like, okay, I need storage. And the last thing is, like all of us learned in geography, that the Indian monsoon is a land-sea breeze driven by the temperature contrast between land and sea. And it turns out that's false. That's not the full story. You have global effects like El Niños, Indian Ocean dipoles, the Madden-Julian oscillation, entering and exiting the stage. So I'm going to ask the gentleman over there, name a famine of India. Just name, India famine, just name one. Which year did it happen? Yeah, the Bengal famine. There was one of the biggest famines in India was the 1875 to 70. In the Bengal famine, between 2 to 3 million people died. In the 1876 to 1876, some say 1875 to 1877 famine, the official estimate, and the official estimate was known to be an underestimate, 5.5 million people died. People died in Madras, people died in Madurai, people died in Arcot. People died, I mean, in some of the famines, 40% of the Guntur district in Andhra Pradesh died. We've forgotten. That's how variable India's water can be, right? And climate change takes each of these and makes them worse. So if it's geographically varied, it'll depress the rainfall in Jaisalmer and increase the rainfall in wetter regions. It will make summer rainfall come down in Chennai and winter rainfall go up in Chennai, which you've already had a practical demonstration. Instead of the rain falling constantly over 40 hours, it will now fall in 30 hours, but probably a greater amount of rain. So not including water and sustainability is a scary thing.
Yeah, like you said, we cannot average India. So when we say India is getting water stressed, which is about 1,000 cubic meter per capita, it's not the same everywhere. I think Tamil Nadu is lower, and some other countries, some other states are much higher. So we have to look at things granularly when we look at water. Again, you've mentioned in the book, and this is a knowledge that there's almost about 4,000 billion cubic meter of precipitation in India across, out of which half, 2,000 almost, I mean, approximately, goes into the sea. And what's available to us is about, I don't know, 1,300, 1,400 billion cubic meters, which we use very profligately, which we abuse. We don't have a plan for storage. There were in the past. There were in the past, and the book has referred to a number of those. But unfortunately, that is missing now. So when you look at what happened across the time that we have had over the last, say, even 10 centuries, if you look at, because I think you've taken it right from the beginning all the way till now, you can see that the approach has been very different in different places. And somehow there was some native knowledge by which we were able to manage in the past, which is missing now. The point that I'm trying to make, and I would like to have your opinion as well, as why water is important in all these sustainability issues and what is the opportunities that we have, is that we should not look at this metric of per capita, because what the quantum or the quantity of water, I'm not now talking of any quality part of it, has never changed. What is there in the world? And neither a drop has been destroyed, nor a drop. It's in different state. It could be polluted, it could be as steam, it could be as ice, etc. But from the days that we were managing or looking at this metric, we had a 1 billion population at some point of time in the world. Today we have 8 billion. So the numerator is sort of the same, the denominator is increasing. So the per capita that we are going to see is going to reduce. It is going to reduce even further as we have our population go up. What is it that we can do different, and why we should do this is something that what would like to know from you, from what you have read. I know that we can't give solutions today and it will be taken up, and I'll come to that question of what an emotional issue water is all about. But what is it that we can do generally for people to know that, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how we can look at water, and this is why it's important to do that.
No, before I come to that, GV, I think you had a question on, like when we were talking earlier today, you had the same question on Bangalore. So if you want.
No, thank you. I was trying to see when is the right opportunity to ask the question. So a little bit of context for the audience. I grew up in Chennai, and a family of 7 in a very small 2-bedroom household. We had the same problems that many Chennaites faced for a long time, which is, water doesn't come, when you open the tap all the time. It comes at times and then it doesn't come at times, and then you are forced to kind of go and take a kodam and stand in the queue to get water, and that's how you had access to water. So I've always carried the fear of, as I grew up, that there would be no water someday, and how do you deal with that? And I now live in Bangalore, and as a city, Bangalore gets a lot more rainfall than Chennai would, and kind of blessed being at the altitude and so on and so forth. And despite that, I woke up in 2018 or 19 one day to an article that said Bangalore could run out of drinking water or water supply by 2020, which was not that far. In a couple of years, there was a conversation around Bangalore running out of water. And, that kind of was a little bit of a shock for a city that gets so much rainfall. So I happen to know Mridula, and, we've had these conversations. And Mridula, thank you also for being an advisor to the ACT Environment, not-for-profit initiative where we are trying to deal with some of these issues. But the question really is, why does a city like Bangalore, which has so much rainfall, so many lakes, still run out of water? What are we looking at here? And, is there anything that we can do about it?
So again, I'll go back. No, thank you, GB. And I think I'm so glad you brought up this issue of the embedded issue of water inequality, right? All of us have bottles of water at our fingertips. I can just open it and drink it. But for many people, most Indians, that's not a luxury we have. And I think, in Sundaram Climate Institute, when we spoke to we've talked to more than 2,000 households now. It's typically the women, and they have to get up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., whenever the tanker comes, run, go, get the 2 buckets, 3 buckets of water. And that's the invisible side of water, right? So, and I think until we make the invisible visible, you're not going to really solve the problem. So let me talk of 3 things that cities can think of in solving the problem. And this is a discussion. I'll keep philosophy last. Okay. But I think practically, again, come back to seasonality, temporality, and climate change. You get your water. I think Madras gets about 45 rain days in a year. Bangalore is also Thorayam, that number. But we use water every day, right? So you have to even it out. So we had the distributed tanks. T Nagar was a huge tank. When I read the Sportsman Book of India, it was 2 miles by 3 mile lake where the Chennai Boat Club, Madras Boat Club used to hold their winter regatta on a mile-long course. Now you say it floods. I mean, you held a regatta there. So I think this is something. Same thing in Bangalore. You had systems of tanks. They've been encroached. The connecting channels have been encroached. So I think the Sundaram Climate Institute actually did a great study which showed, like, if you rejuvenate the tank, groundwater levels go up by 100 to 200 feet, right? And I think, Ranganath, you said every time you desilt the tank, next year it's silted up again and people encroach it again. They're a very land scarce thing. So what we found out in our studies, and I've put in the book, is earlier the Aries and all were a great source of both spiritual status and cash flow. So each tank was like a cash flow machine. Like, you built the tank, you got karmic brownie points. You maintain the tank, you got status in village festivals. There's a caste element to it, but, just keeping that aside for a moment, fishing, huge cash flow. Livestock, huge cash flow. Lotus flowers, huge cash flow. Today, you go sit next to some yeri, it's got shakada, it's got dogs, it's got solid waste. What status can it give you? So how do you get that back? One of the ways that we found out was a good way is to develop sustainable tourism around the tanks. Cycling tracks, selfie spots, Wi-Fi hotspots, performance things. Madurai, when the Teppakulam, they got water again and they started doing some of this stuff. Within a year, we counted 123 livelihoods around a single tank.
Wow.
That is a good way to go. And the moment you do that, a dysfunctional tank versus a functional tank, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little jargony here, 200 feet of groundwater, less flooding because there's place for the intense rainfall to flow into, okay, a place to hang out, and 100 rupees lower spent per month on buying water. So I think that's the philosophy, which is buying water and the price therefore, which we'll keep separately. That's the true source of security, but I'll come back to that later. But that's one way of doing it.
Got it. And then just maybe to add to that, one of the things you mentioned in your book is about the sense of community taking ownership of a water body, which used to be the case, when we lived the way we lived. And in bigger cities, of course, the problem is the tragedy of the commons. Everybody is, putting their own borewell and kind of exploiting a common resource. And, it works for them, but overall it doesn't work for everyone. So have you seen experiments in any city anywhere in the world where water went back to becoming a community resource that was protected?
One of my mentors who I've seen is actually Rajendra ji, right? So Rajendra Singh, who's done precisely that, but his is the most profound example. There are several others, but I'll stick to that. But
This
I think
is the one in Alwar.
This is the Alwar one. And again, let's go back to the past, where it was always a community managed resource. When did it become centralized? So the British came in and they centralized it. And if you read the Chennai Health Officer report of 1960s, he rants and rants about the tanks of Chennai, cesspools, malaria infestations, they should be filled up. He should be made to pay a fine. Everything is in there saying it's an unwholesome thing to have tanks, right? And for the British administration, providing centralized water did two things. It provided control, it provided revenue, right? And the building the infrastructure provided great returns on British capital, right? So it was three things. That's when it started going away. But when it moved away, it just took away things like fishing auctions and everything went away. So that getting the community vested back into the tank is critical. No, that's a great question.
Yeah, these are valid points basically. And to the question, is somebody doing work other than Rajendra saying, yes, there are many across India. In fact, the first thing I came across was not in India, was in Australia, where they pumped water in instead of pumping water out. Massive pumps pumping water in to stop salinity. That has happened in Gujarat. Salinity has been pushed by 10 kilometers towards the sea. And there are private companies through the CSR efforts which are doing this, including Ambuja Cement and all this. But what's new now that I see, and we are trying to push the government as a part of the Pump Manufacturers Association, who have been instrumental in making these bore well pumps. And I must admit that her grandfather and my grandfather started the first pump manufacturing bore well pumps in India in 1954, which he didn't know, but I knew. But that was a different thing altogether. But it became a standard and people didn't realize that it has to be sustainable. So now, in the last thing, and now it's picked up by IPMA, that every farmer will start, when the rainy season, pumping water back into the bore wells, water recharge, so they can recharge the aquifer. There are 3 levels of aquifer. The first level somehow gets recharged. But if you go further down, you have issues because it takes millions of years for the water to percolate. And she has mentioned that in her book too, in terms of how the water goes down. So it's important that we really work on, I would say, 3 levels: short, medium, and long term. The short term, of course, is to reduce the per capita consumption, is to recycle, reuse, do whatever you need to do. And some people talk against RO. I'm not against RO. Technology, if you will always have a few things that are going bad. Yeah, you have to manage the reject. At home, we have a small RO plant. That reject is connected in buckets and it's used to water plants, because it's not, I checked the TDS, it's not more than 600-700, and plants accept these kind of things. So we need to do that. Yeah. So there are examples given in the book. So I think at 3 levels we need to, like I said, short, medium. The medium term is to what she has said: restore all the water bodies, get them connected. Chennai, I understand, had 300 tanks which were mostly man-made and connected to each other. Yeah, you could use this. Yeah. And today, how many do we have? Yeah, maybe about 40 of them. And that too, they have to be restored. So that's the situation. So when you talk about floods, the water's not going to ask your permission because you put your house there. So that being the situation, people think that technology is a panacea for all this. So I would like to ask this question: technology versus mindset. Where are you on this? So how do you balance these two? And both seem to be, everybody thinks it's not my problem, it's somebody else's water, but I need it free. But technology will sort.
I think we've discussed this. Technology is not a bottleneck. There is technology to solve there is technology to seed clouds, to make it rain when you want to rain. There's technology to draw water out of air. I've seen 3 startups and in that space alone. There's technology. There's a very cool tech company that, and it's in the book. It's a robot that goes down a bore well. And that's the first time I traveled 750 feet under the ground to actually see how it looked, and, you know, how it actually works. And you can make little punctures in the thing to let the water come down. I think Mali and I have both fellow co-investors, so many of the stories, the backstory is more interesting. Technology is not a bottleneck. Technology can be dangerous. I mean, the borewell has been the most transformational technology of India. I think if one thing changed India, it's the borewell, right? We talk a lot of dams. Dams are powerful as well, but the borewell has been more transformational than anything else. And so technology is not a bottleneck. Okay, money is also not a bottleneck. And GV, I think you can also speak to that. I think there's $17 trillion in negative yielding bonds today or more.
Yeah, we are in an age of excess liquidity. Money is not the concern at all.
Money is not the concern. And I think all of us investors are here saying we're happy to pump in the money. So it just goes back to the mindset. And I think, you know, what we've been ever since, you know, we said we would go to this discussion, we've been going back and forth on what the bottleneck is. And the bottleneck is philosophy, right? The genie in the room is actually the value of water. How do you value water and how do you price it? Unfortunately or fortunately, we live in an economic world. There is no going away from that. And in an economic world, what is priced is priced, and what is unpriced is invisible, right? And the big aha moment for me in my writing journey was water in India has always had a price. One of the things I write about is Chanakya, in that Chanakya Arthashastra. He talks of the water tax, right? And he talks of, it's a progressive water tax, as in the rich pay more. And so he talks of how much a farmer should pay. So if a farmer took water manually from a field, he has to pay like a fifth of his crop, 20% tax. If he took it through mechanical means or whatever, like through a bullock cart, he had to pay 25% tax. But if he took it through like a wheel wherein he could draw more, he had to pay 30% tax. A third of his crop was paid as tax. So it was progressive. But now reverse it and take it to today, right? If you flip on the borewell, if you take Bangalore, let's come back to Bangalore, okay? Roughly you pay 10 rupees per 1,000 liters is roughly your borewell charge, and that's how much you pay. If you get piped water, you pay 22 rupees per 1,000 liters. So if you're richer, you're getting cheaper water. But if you're poor and you're dependent fully on tanker water and you're living in the periphery, you're paying 30 paisa per liter. So we've ultared it from the time of Chanakya. And unfortunately, the political narrative, not political, the popular narrative is water is, what do you say? Birthright. And
Free water is birthright.
And that's a 1960s onwards narrative. It was in all of Indian history. Water had a price. It was a price paid in kind. It was a seasonably variable price. It was a progressive pricing. This is a new, unless we crack that narrative, it's going to be very difficult to solve India's problems.
It's very interesting you mentioned this, Mridula, just to come in again. What, like most things we think of, markets sort themselves out. Like if water is becoming scarce, it should become more expensive. That should generate a behavior of, lower consumption or more careful consumption. Why is that not happened yet? Like why isn't the market mechanism not, leveling the ground today?
The market needs a signal. Right? Today, it's profitable to buy a pair of jeans and pairing a pair of jeans very easy, right? I mean, okay, we have a lot of where are the startups coming, right? Where are the startups coming? Where is the market being incentivized to go in? I mean, and nowhere is this more apparent than how we value our forests. Right. So when you look at our forests and you divert, and the forest water link is the most underappreciated and critical link in India. But when you look at forests and you look at forest values, that came from the British mindset. And for the British, why were forests important? Forests were important for the timber, the trees timber. Today, an acre of forest, 60% of that value comes from the value of the trees. We're literally missing the forest for the trees. So the market needs a signal. No? Otherwise, how will the market optimize stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there is no business case, Ravi, when you ask why is the market not reacting? When something is free and when you expect it to be given free by the government, and the government is bending over back sometimes to give all kinds of freebies, that's because it's politically expedient. So you can't expect a market. There is no business case. We've been working on a PPP model for water. And last year we did that when we gave this thing to the government of India. We said that it does not work because one thing, there's no business case. And whenever the PPP comes in, all the risks are one-sided. I've just told Mridula a story. When the tsunami came, the entire thing was, became saline, all the water, especially in Nagapattinam area. So we put 6 systems along with the others, RO systems, which are portable. We put them there. We trained all the women. We said that, okay, the capex will take care of. You charge per liter so that the operations can be taken care of and you can maintain it. For 5 or 6 years, it went well. The women were trained, self-help groups. And suddenly I got a thing from the government say, we no longer need it. Please take it back. And we said, why? I was quite shocked. The government had dug bore wells and they were giving it free. The water quality was horrible. We tested it out. It had about 2,000 ppm of salts in it, but saline water is 20,000. So the people preferred to buy that free water and not pay 10 paisa a liter or something for RO water, which not only was clean water, but also saved them from all diseases. But that was not the thinking. And why? Like I said, the mindset is the issue. The public has to change its mindset because they don't actually calculate the health cost of water, of bad water.
See, there's another thing also, like in the same study where we spoke to the households, when Chennai had its tryst with day zero, 2019 Chennai water crisis, when was there, Madurai also had a water crisis. Okay, and it was terrible. So people, sorry, I'm just slipping into Tamil. A lot of people got water once in 4 days, once in 3 days, once a week. And those were some of the people we asked the question. If you got 24/7 water piped to your house, would you pay a price? Yeah, there are people saying, Illa. And the answer was no, right? And it was I was discussing this with Dr. J. Srinivasan, who's a mentor and the very, very senior scientist in Indian Institute of Science. And he said, what is going on? Why is you are getting water once in 4 days, right? You're deciding in your income, you're not wealthy enough to buy good water, like the RO water, for both your 2-year-old and your 6-month-old. And you can only afford good water for your 6-month-old, and your 2-year-old has to rely on his or her power immune system to survive. Why are you not paying? This is all hypothesis after this. But what we heard is, Riyalave Kudupangla. Right? So there is some skepticism. But another very big thing that we found is it's very emotive, right? It's very emotive that water should be free. And I think once you get into emotion, it becomes very difficult to argue. And it's a sustained narrative that is plugged in. So I think there is the cost, female workforce participation. I think how can we expect our women to come in and be fresh and productive and creative and efficient in the mornings when they're getting up for 2 hours in the middle of the night and fighting with people for water? I think, there is a very, very heavy cost. And one more thing, if I can say, water is a social multiplier. I think you said it in your thing also, and we've Rajendra Singh's thing also. Once you fix water, a lot of other things get fixed. Girls start going to school. Marriages start getting delayed. fewer, better outcomes, marriages begin to happen.
Yeah, in fact, this is true.
Yeah.
In fact, there is a video on which we had put a solar pump in a village this is about 8-9 years ago in Maharashtra. Now it's a common thing. And what that lady told had me really laughing. She said, now we get girls to marry our boys in a village because we have water.
Yeah.
And then the other lady said, look, our cow gives better milk because we have water.
Yeah, tannilla kaadukku na vandu ponnu kudukka matten. I mean, like my daughter also has to go and walk and get water. No? So I think water is a very positive multiplier. And I think there is look, for the British, it was all well and good that they provided, and the spin was it's the government's job to provide. So that shift happened then. And we really got brainwashed, because until then, water is our responsibility, communal responsibility, we will work, Shramdan, all of that was there. The British said, no, it is the obligation of the government to provide. Of course, the underlying spin was a 23% return on water investment, which was not spoken about in, to the masses. We've taken that, and when competitive politics entered India, we made it free.
Yeah, I mean, we competed with each other to make it free.
So water has become, like Rajendra Singh and I always say, like water has gone from being a responsibility to a right. Earlier, it used to be a responsibility, and until it goes back to being a responsibility and a right, I think it's going to be difficult.
Which again brings me to another question. See, you cannot say water is somebody's responsibilities. All the stakeholders have to come together. Now, how do we get all the stakeholders together? It's the public, like you and me. It's the government. It's the industry. And it's agriculture. And agriculture is a big elephant in the room, which is fraught with political issues. So people are afraid to touch that. You have to know what's happening. And agriculture uses 85 to 90% of the water that India consumes. And because of bore wells, they simply pump all the time. And that was exacerbated by free power, which meant that whenever there was power, it would come in the night, the pumps would be on and it would flood the place. So a lot of changes have to take place. And that's one of the things we need to do in terms of cropping patterns, what we eat, what we do. So what is your opinion on this, and how do we go about sensitizing this whole stakeholder community without leaving a single person to ensure that we work together?
So I think the farm laws have really shown us how difficult it is going to be to bring reform, even reform that builds resilience to the sector, right? And one of the things that I found in the course of working in this field and writing this book is that the only solution that is likely to work, more likely, is something that is decentralized, where benefit and cost are somewhat evenly matched, right? One of the things that I'm very gung-ho on is, let's take let's leave Punjab and Haryana, who are the gleaming success symbols, for a minute, and go to the fields of northern Karnataka or Maharashtra, okay? That's where onions are grown. And all of us have experienced onions sometime in the last 2 days. Most onion farmers are small, they're rain-fed, they're completely exposed to the volatility of water. So there is a graph in the book that shows onion prices used to move like this, and in the last decade, they're moving like this, right? And there's another graph in the book which shows suicides, farmer suicides in India have plummeted, except in 2 states, Maharashtra and Karnataka. Right? And again, this comes to what do you do for farmers? Again, I'm going to look at Mali because he and I have been trying to get through a number of agri-tech startups through to funding. And the best way, I think, and that's again to your point on market and what can the market do? Get more buyers for onions. So today, a small farmer is beholden to his local merchant. He cannot afford to transport it. There are very few mandis that he can go to. There's not enough market infrastructure. So he's dependent on the local trader. If he's selling only, there are 10 farmers selling to one trader, he can't command terms. But if there is one farmer selling to 10 buyers, the dynamics change. Okay, and that is the hope of getting the private sector into the farming thing, which is what the farm laws try to do. But I mean, many of these private traders are already there. So saying private traders are not in farming is like, it's not, I mean, they're already there. It's just getting more people in. And I think the other thing that I would say, what can people in this room do? Many of you may not be farmers. What can all of us do? Question what we eat? No. I think, if the government buys rice and wheat and you expect rice and wheat in your ration shop, the farmer is going to grow rice and wheat. Our part of millet varandittu, our part of rice ketona. I mean, it's like, it doesn't make sense. I think the change has to start from the demand side and then move backwards from there. Again, decentralized, do it in small sections. I think a lot of farm to fork startups are trying to do that. And I think that movement, if it grows, this farm ship is going to it needs all hands to push. So decentralized, more buyers.
Yeah, and also sugarcane should have never been grown in Maharashtra. So they moved to cash crops from crops that are native, and that's an issue. Yeah. So, and this cash crop business, we came up with our MSPs for very specific ones. Like she said, if we are going to eat wheat and rice, I mean, wheat and rice was not staple, I think, a few hundred years ago.
That is purely British.
Yeah, and the Punjab never grew any paddy.
Punjab, in the book, I actually looked at what Indus Valley farmers grew in Punjab. There's a wonderful set of archaeobotany studies where people looked at seeds from the Indus Valley sites, dated it by sediment layer, and saw what Indus farmers grew over time, over place, they really matched water to crop, and that's why they became so wealthy. We paid cash tax in kind. So if there is an El Nino year, you essentially paid no tax. But the British came and said, you know what, you're paying 30% tax. That's just too much. I'll make it 10%, but it'll be a fixed tax and it will be paid in cash. So, and you know what, you can own the land. So until then, the farmer had never handled collateral. He'd never been exposed to credit. Suddenly, you're asked to pay, and then you have this variable cloud messenger. No, some years he comes on time, he gets everything right. And then some years it's just not there. So that's when your cotton starts going up, your wheat starts going up, your sugarcane starts going up, your rice starts going up. Cash crops came as a direct, and people started believing, Tanni up, that local water doesn't matter anymore. I've got canals to bring water in. I've got railways to take water out. Why does geographical water matter? And to your point on technology works. Technology can overcome the variability of water. I think water is now talking back.
It's
So in my first book, I went through a long list of how detailed Israel's water prices. Israel charges a different price for its farmers, charges a different price for the farmers who use recycled sewage, charges different prices for industries using different types of quality, charges a different price for base domestic demand, additional domestic demand. They have several water prices which reflect both supply and demand. That's why they're successful.
We need to price water. So I don't know what your name is, sir. What's your name, sir? Muralidharan. Are you prepared to drink sewage recycled? No, I want to ask you directly. Are you prepared? Israel does. Singapore does. The day we are prepared. See sewage, is it? Sewage water. Okay. That's on the lighter side, because I think we have to push for the reforms. We have to push. So I know it's difficult, but I did when new water was released in Singapore, along with Lee Kuan Yew, we were about 100 of us. We toasted with that sewage water. We all drank it. No, but no. If you come to our company, the company I was working for, if I put a bottle of treated sewage water and the raw water that we get, you will say that the treated sewage water is better. Exactly. So,
no, but let me say one thing. I just looked at another startup which does this, and I think you should never try and fight battles you don't need to fight. Right. I think if you can treat your sewage and use it for other purposes, that's
Yeah,
okay.
that is good enough.
We don't necessarily need to drink sewage, treated sewage for water.
What we said is mindset is the problem. That's why I put it out across to you. Anyway, I think we have run out of time. It's 7 o'clock, and yeah, we'll ask a few. Yeah, you have anything, GB, or otherwise we'll ask people if they have any questions.
I just want to ask one last question about what we can do individually. And Mridula, you said an excellent example of becoming self-sufficient. I'm curious to know how people can become self-sufficient when it comes to water.
No, I think, see, again and again, one word I've used constantly in the book is decentralized, right? Let's not try to solve India's water. What the biggest advantage of India is its population. 1 Chennai is 4 Singapores or 4 Israels. If you get 1/4 of Chennai to adopt meaningful pricing or meaningful regulation, you can spawn a wave of innovation that brings jobs, it brings GDP, and it brings water resilience. Same thing at the house. I mean, at the end of the day, when I ran out of water at home, if I was going to say "Enga thanni kodunga" and all that, yarum kodukka poradilla. And we're playing. We became resilient, right? And today it's so easy. I think as long as this remains invisible, nothing's going to happen. Once it becomes visible and you feel it's my responsibility, we go back to that philosophy of it's my responsibility. I think there is hope.
Yeah, just 2 words that I was thinking when she was talking. She used one: accountability and responsibility, which is in short supply. Once we do that, automatically things fall in place. Measurement and verification. Yeah. Yeah, what you can't measure, you can't improve.
Do you feel concentration of population in cities is causing one of the water shortage? For example, if we take the case of Chennai, a lot of concentration of people, the available water gets distributed to many. Not only that, when the population comes in, it occupies the water bodies as well to construct buildings. Do you feel that it has to be structured in such a way that the population dispersed accordingly instead of concentrating in few places as such?
Concentration, yeah, I got it. See, the problem with concentration is actually it makes land very valuable, right? The moment land becomes very valuable and you have centralized supply coming in and you have borewells supplying water, the role of the tank becomes very marginalized, right? So if you have municipal supply and you have borewell, the tank's role is not that important. Then the tank becomes very valuable as dry land. Right. So you just cut off the tank, you fill up the area, fill up pannittingna pudu land in the heart of the city. Yeah. So, I mean, if you have more population, see, that's the problem, right? The central challenge for cities is to take India's very geographically varied water, seasonal water, and transport it over space and time to make it available at a time, at a place. So you have to take care of both geographical variability and seasonal variability. And let's not forget, some of our biggest cities today are colonial outposts. When the British set them up, the British didn't ask for well water provided sites. They got konjo second grade sites only. And now they became great cities without good water endowment, without big perennial rivers running through them. So your problems just became more and more, right? So you've got Calcutta, which no sane person will set up as a city because it's in like the cyclone zone. So is Chennai. It is a colonial artifact that these cities were created where they are and they became grand cities later.
I have a question. My name is Vijay. I live in ECR for the last 5-6 years. I have a couple of observations living there. One, I see the big desalination plant in Nemili. And is it, what's the take on desalination plants? Is it like operationally viable? Because I read somewhere that Chennai Water Supply Board makes pretty huge loss, mainly because of the operational cost of distributing the desalination plant. That's one observation. I want to take your take on that. Second is the water tax in my neighborhood, right? It's pretty much flat rate in large houses compared to some of my friends who live in other part of the smaller neighborhoods. So I think there is a large disparity in terms of what tax being collected from water between areas. Just want to know what's your take on it.
I think what you are alluding to is correct. Yeah. So desalination will break the bank of municipal finances. Already, I mean, I've written extensively about municipal finances, why they matter, why they don't collect, etc. So we've said flood, we have to build storm drains, right? We have to monitor people. All that needs money. No? If your finances are broken, you're not going to be able to spend that. Okay. And a flat rate, I'll ask all of you, how much do you pay for water? When I asked this to my students, they didn't know the answer. So it's obviously not enough, meaningful enough for you to manage. So I think you've answered both your questions. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good financially. So long term, it's not going to be good. And yeah, flat rates are probably not going to incentivize. So you have to increase and you have to collect also.
Ma'am, I want to ask and I want to speak something. Can I do it? I want to ask some questions, sir. Okay. So I thought you will be telling this, but you didn't tell this about it. So I want to ask this, but it's not been a major cause that been a population alone. I want to tell this thing, ma'am. Can I tell it Tamil? Yeah. Yes, sir. Thanks. இப்போ வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா பாப்புலேஷன் மட்டுமே ஒரு காரணம் இல்ல. ஒரு மெஜிஷியன் இங்க இருக்காரு. அந்த மெஜிஷியன் வந்து எல்லாத்தையும் வந்து மறைச்சிடுறாரு. யாருன்னு நான் சொல்லட்டுமா? கார்ப்பரேட்ஸ். ஸோ வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா ஒரு நம்ம இந்தியா தமிழ்நாடு மட்டும் வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா மோர் தென் ஒரு 4000 TMCs வந்து தண்ணி நமக்கு வந்து கிடைக்குது. பட் வந்து நிறைய வந்து அண்டர் கிரவுண்ட்ஸ்ல போயிட்டே இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி நம்ம சொல்றோம். பட் அது ஏன் தடுக்கங்கிற விஷயம் வந்து ஒண்ணு இருக்கு மேம். இங்க வந்து நீர் பொருளாதாரங்கிற பேர்ல வந்து இங்க வந்து நம்ம கார்ஸை தயாரிக்கிறதுனால பல லட்சங்கள் வந்து எக்ஸ்போர்ட் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். இங்க இருந்து கார் தயாரிச்சு அதனால இங்க வந்து மோர் தென் டன்ஸ் ஆஃப் தண்ணி வந்து இங்க வந்து வேஸ்டா போய்கிட்டு இருக்கு. அப்புறம் இல்லாம வந்து இங்க வந்து இந்த கோக் பெப்சி எல்லாம் நம்ம குடிக்கிறோம் பாத்தீங்களா?
Now we are deviating. I let you ask. நீ எங்க போயிட்டீங்க? நல்ல क्वेश्चन.
அந்த ஒரு
क्वेश्चन மட்டும் சொல்லுங்க ப்ளீஸ், because another 5 minutes.
சோ வந்து இந்த கார்ப்பரேட்ஸ் பத்தியே நீங்க கேட்கல, பேசல.
Yeah.
See, நம்ம எல்லாரும் இப்போ இந்த ரூம்ல வந்து நிறைய பேர் இருக்கோம். எல்லாரும் வந்து ஒரு இதுக்கு அக்ரி பண்ணணும்னா அதுக்கு என்ன வேண்டி இருக்கு? ஏதாவது ஒரு பிரச்சனை இருக்கு, அது எப்படி பிரிக்கணும்னு அக்ரி பேச ஆரம்பிக்கணும்னா அதுக்கு என்ன தேவை இருக்கு? What do you need to frame a problem and start a discussion? What do you need? No, you don't need funds. Funds is part of the solution. What you need is data. Right? You need to know how much somebody uses. Ilana, each person will say, you're a fool. I don't agree with your what you're saying. What is the basis for agreeing? If my son comes and says, I've done a fantastic job at my computer science class, and my daughter said, no, his teacher was scolding him. How do I know whether they're correct or not? I have to see the mark sheet, no? I need data, no? India doesn't have data on water, good enough data on water. First, we need to know how much water we have, how much each person is using. Then we can start agreeing whether who is right. See, before all this, we can sit and fight all you want. But the issue is, we have a real problem. This is the most frightening problem that I know of. But we need data on it. And today it's a black hole.
Yeah, good, madam. Now, thank you. We've got a number of questions on the online viewers. We'll take 2-3 of them. We have more than 750 people are watching this program live on a various social media portals, but we'll go much more. The first question is from Raghuraman from Trichy. What he says, madam, today you must have read in the newspaper, if the MSP is made applicable to others than wheat and rice, the people will migrate from water, consuming crop to other non-water. Do you think the water will get saved by this? Minimum support price?
No, it won't get saved. No, it won't get saved because MSP matters only as far as procurement machinery exists to support that MSP. Procurement machinery will only matter as much as demand exists to make that procurement necessary. Today, the demand exists for rice and wheat, right? And the procurement machinery exists for rice and wheat. So the rest of the MSP is nice to have coffee table conversation.
Yes. Here's a question to Ravi. Ravishankar, it's a question for you. He says, sir, I want to know that while you're investing the proposal which comes to you, do you have a detailed verification of the sustainable development goal of that organization which you are investing? Insist on water sustainability enforced upon by them in all their business plans. Your view, and can you give any example of recent company which you invested, you insist on this to be implemented?
Short answer is a no, meaning we don't ask questions on sustainability yet. But one of the things we are working on as a part of ACT Environment is to get startups kind of to understand the importance of ESG goals, environment, sustainable, things, as well as things leading, things around equality from a gender perspective. And these are things that we're starting to kind of talk to them about, and we are going to create a framework that they can adopt, based on which they can start thinking about these issues more than they're doing today. It's a good question. We are not yet there yet, but increasingly people that are giving money to people like us to manage are starting to ask the questions on whether we are emphasizing on these. So there's a kind of a trickle effect of them asking us and us asking the companies, and hopefully over a period of time, these things will become necessities.
Thank you, Ravi. The question from Mr. Mauli is here in that auditorium today. Madam, this is addressed to Mridula. Being executive director of Sundaram Textiles, I want to ask you an integrated question, madam. Is the water scarcity rising the price of the cotton up? Bangladesh is able to bring out benefit because they have surplus water and they're able to produce cotton at a much cheaper price. Your perspective, please.
Cotton prices are at all times high, like inflation is very high. So I won't comment on that. Again, I'm sure many of you have heard the comment that it takes 2,700 liters to produce a t-shirt. What is less known is most of that water is used in growing the cotton crop. And India has one of the highest water footprints, that is the amount of water used to grow cotton, because it has one of the lowest yields. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't grow cotton. They buy our cotton.
Ma'am, Bangladesh is actually reaping the benefits of the raw cotton which we are producing. Actually, their rise in textile industry.
I sit on a lot of the export cotton related things, so I'll have to be very circumspect.
I think you'll have a discussion after.
What I'm asking is the water scarcity actually rising the cotton prices up?
No, okay, now I understand what you're saying. See, I'll take a step back, right? There are two issues of what you're saying. Are we exporting virtual water because we're exporting a lot of things, right? That's one thing. Second thing you're asking is yield getting impacted because of water issues and therefore our price is going up? Okay, yeah. So I think both are fantastic questions, right? So we export tremendous amounts of virtual water, more than, you know, a significant months of domestic demand, okay, can be met by the virtual water exports. But it again comes back to the pricing issue. Today, who cares? That water is free. So it's invisible, right? So that's number one. On yield and the impact on prices, there is a lot of different levers going into prices. So I won't comment one-to-one. If there is a water problem and the yield falls, the prices do get impacted. But I think what is much more interesting in your question is the longer term impact. Because India is the most vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And most of Indian farmers are rain-fed. They're completely exposed to the elements. They have no protection. And yields are expected to go down if we don't adapt. So I think it's fantastic questions. But
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Molly. Thank you so much. I take two last questions before we come to the close, actually. The first question is, Madam, this is again regarding river waterways. I think you've seen in the newspaper this morning, this question from Mr. Guruswamy. He says, river, you're able to hear me? River waterways. He says most of the river waterways, I don't think anywhere the name of South India is triggered in the river waterways. Since you've done a research, is there any scope for river waterways in South India in future at least? It'll save water as well as to a great extent reduce the cost of transportation.
see, I'll go back to history on that one. The story I wrote is of Patliputra. See, at that time, a large part, it was very difficult to get stuff to the shores in terms of export and all that. So most transport happened through rivers. And Patliputra, when you read about it, it's a grand jewel. It had 4 rivers. It was like a parallelogram with the Son and the Ganga and all that. I think it must have been magnificent. But to have river waterways, we need flow in the rivers. So I think let's get flow in the rivers and then we can go to waterways and go back.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. One last question is, this is a question again from Mr. Ramaswamy from Chennai. What he wants to know, madam, the groundwater level in Chennai has come almost, I believe, 1 feet after the rain, 1 or 2 feet groundwater level. And this has gone to prove like many of the buildings with underground parking and underground thing got flooded actually. The water started coming because of the seepage and what's happening in many buildings. Now, this clearly goes to prove that to maintain this continuous level, the water harvesting is the best solution. How do we ensure discipline of water harvesting in the Chennai city so that many of the issues can be avoided?
Okay. So again, I'll go back to the study we did. So in the 2000 households, rainwater harvesting is a mandatory thing. In the 2000 households that we spoke to, I think 40 to 50% only had functional rainwater harvesting systems. Then we asked them, some of them didn't know. So there's some education there. But again and again and again, why optimize what cost it?
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Mridula and the panelists. A fascinating evening. I think we have become more wiser. I'm quite sure each one of us will use the water. A couple of questions, yeah. Yes, I think we're come to the end of the thing, sir. You should. 7:15. Sorry. Now okay. My vice president say I can't say quickly. Yes, go ahead. This auditorium is such a sound flow. You can speak, anybody can hear. Even if you whisper, people hear. Come on, go ahead.
That's a fantastic question. See, I think, let me go back to, when people talk of polar bears dying in climate change, like half the people here won't even know what a polar bear is. Okay. So again, when you talk of water, don't talk of the Ganges, don't talk of the Ganga, don't talk of the Brahmaputra. Talk about the Kuvam, talk about the Koshasthalayar, talk about the Adayar. I mean, that's it. Like when they did, like in my daughter's class in 2nd standard, they said, in buckets of water, how much water do you use in a day? Right? How do you use it? What is your nearest koram? Make it very, very local. And I'll tell you, this is not just what I'm saying. I was in a water conference where a government teacher from Orissa had presented. He said when people are taught in terms of local examples, the learning of children goes up a lot more. It's interesting. B, it's relevant. C, I can actually go see whether it's true or not. So I think teach water locally, because water is local. You know, learning about the Brahmaputra flow does not affect us. Learning about the Kuam flow does affect it.
Thank you. Thank you. I think totally run out of time. Otherwise, young man, very good questions and good, we could ask this question. Thank you so much, all the viewers, and thanks to our panelists. Thanks, Ravi, for joining us from Dubai. As a token of our appreciation, I would like to present the two, Mali, maybe Shankar, may I request also join on stage to present a memento on behalf of Atesh, another committee member. Please join us on stage to present the memento. It's a nice. Maybe when you come next time, you visit MMA, we'll be happy to present a memento.
Thank you so much.
Maybe I can have on the screen, please. We will present on behalf of you a lovely mass to the people around, and as a token of our appreciation, this is what we do. Thank you so much for joining us from Dubai, and your presence has made all the difference and added tremendous value to this evening.
Thank you so much.
This is what we go around and present the mask and other on behalf of you. Thank you so much. And thanks so much. Thanks all the viewers. Maybe we would like to take a picture with the book. We have not done that. The book, the Watershed book.
Thank you all. I'll take your leave right now. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.